The third programme carried the story to late 1974, where John Lennon joined Elton John on stage in concert at Madison Square Garden in New York. In this, the fourth part of the series, Andy Peebles continues the conversation with John and Yoko, discussing their music and life together through the period from early 1975 to the end of 1979.
Right, number 9, Dream, came up in February 1975 from the album, another much-played track in Great Britain, and I dare say here as well.
Yeah, it got to about number 9, actually.
Yes, it did.
That's what I call craftsmanship writing, meaning, I just churned that out. I mean, I'm not putting it down, it's just what it is what it is. But I just sat down and wrote it, with no real inspiration, based on a dream I'd had. I wrote it round the string arrangement I'd written for Harry Nilsson album I'd produced of Many Rivers to Cross, the Jimmy Cliff, is it, number?
That's right.
And I'd done this string arrangement for that. And it was such a nice melody on the strings. I thought, this is a tune, So I just wrote words to the string arrangement. That was number 9, Dream. Kind of psychedelic, dreamy kind of thing.
In March 1975, you teamed up with David Bowie on Fame.
Yeah, I was never in the London scene in the 60s, whereas George and Paul would be going around everybody's sessions all the time, playing with everybody. I never played anywhere without the Beatles. I never jammed around with people at all.
Loyalty, or it just didn't interest you?
No, just shyness, insecurity, and I couldn't go in a session and play like George plays. I'm limited vocabulary on the guitar and the piano. So what could I do going in with Cream or whatever they were doing those days? So I never hung out in the clubs playing. I hung out in the discos boogieing and drinking and that, but I never did that bit. And then suddenly I was working with Elton, and then Bowie was around and we were talking and that, and he'd say, come down, and I found myself doing that. So he's fiddling around, he writes them in the studio. He goes in about 4 words and a few guys and starts laying down this stuff. And he has virtually nothing, he's making it up in the studio. So I just contributed whatever I contributed, like backwards piano and a couple of things like repeat of Fame. And then we needed a middle 8, so we took some Stevie Wonder middle 8 and did it backwards, and we made a record out of it, right? So he got his first number 1, so I felt that was like a karmic thing, With me and Elton, I got my first number 1, so I passed it on to Bowie and he got his. And I like that track, I must say I admire him, vast repertoire of talent the guy has. I was never around when the Ziggy Stardust thing came, because I'd already left England when all that was going on, so I didn't really know what he was. And meeting him doesn't give you much more of a clue,
That's very true. That's very true.
Because you don't know which one you're talking to, and we all have our little personality traits, so between him and me, I don't know what was going down, but we seemed to have some kind of communication together, and I think he's great, the fact that he could just walk into that and do that. I could never do that.
You did Across the Universe on that album, didn't you?
I could never go and do an Elephant Man. But she's great. She tells me I can do everything. I can make a movie, because you only have to learn 2 lines at once.
I'm not talking about specifically Elephant Man.
I can't even remember my own lyrics, so I couldn't go on stage and remember all that.
Do you remember doing Across the Universe with Bowie? You played guitar on that?
Did I play on that too?
I think you did.
Oh, yeah, my God, jeez, I did, yeah.
A lot of die-hard fans of the old days in Britain would say, yeah, John Lennon's our king rocker.
Oh, that's nice.
How does John Lennon feel about that statement?
Well,
Three people said that to me before I left London.
Well,
friends of mine.
good on you. I'll knight you as the king of rock. I now call you Sir Whoever.
You did Bebopaloola, Sweet Little 16, Peggy Sue.
Yeah, there's millions. I would do albums of that stuff, but I get schlacked for, he can't write anymore. I like to just go in.
Was that the case at the time, John?
There was a bit of that, he's run dry, so he has to do these. I did them for the pure hell of it. And that was the first one where I gave Spector his head. Although it came to a different kind of head in the end. Another long story. If you look at the album, there's about 5 of Spector's, and then there's 5 I knocked off in 5 days, which was Bebopaloola and the Holly stuff and the Carla Thomas, Sam Cooke song and all that, because he ran away with the tapes. He called me. Yeah, he ran off with the 16 tracks and locked them in his garage or somewhere. I couldn't get him, and he called me one night. A very far-out guy, he calls me and says... He calls me, and we're in the middle of the session, because they had never got that close to him on the Imagine and the Plastic Ono things, because he'd been very good and just come and gone away again, and I hadn't really got to know him. On the Rock and Roll, it took me 3 weeks to convince him that I wasn't going to co-produce with him, and I wasn't going to go in the control room. I said, I just want to be a singer. You just treat me like Ronnie. We pick the material. I just want to sing. I don't want anything to do with production or writing or creation. I just want to sing. So I finally convinced him. Anyway, long story short, One day, when he didn't want to work one night, he called me and said, the studio's been burnt down. In the early days, I didn't know about him, you know. I didn't know how far away he was. So I said, oh, the studio's burnt down. So anyway, a couple of hours passed. The studio's burnt down. So I get somebody to call. The studio hasn't been burnt down. That was the Sunday. The following Sunday, he calls me. He says, on the phone, hey, Johnny. I said, oh, there you are, Phil. What happened? We're supposed to be doing a session on it. I've got the John Dean tapes. I says, what? I've got the John Dean tapes.
Watergate.
Right, Watergate. I said, what are you talking about? He says, the house is surrounded by helicopters now. They're trying to get him. I said, the house is surrounded. I'm buying this garbage, you know. So I'm saying the house is surrounded. You got the John Dean tapes. I said, well, what about our session? You know, aren't we supposed to be finishing or something? You know, it's costing money, this. And he said, I said, what are you doing? I'm the only one that knows how to tell whether they've been doctored or edited or not. I said, well, what he was telling me in his own sweet way was he had my tapes. Not the John Dean Watergate tapes. He had my tapes locked in the cellar behind the barbed wire and the Afghan dogs and the machine guns. So there's no way you could get him. So that album was stopped in the middle for a year. We had to sue through Capitol to get him back off him. By then it had been going on and on and on, and it was the Tampax Lost Weekend period as well, and it was all hell was going on. And I'd somehow got committed to producing Harry Nilsson's album, which that's when I sobered up in Harry Nilsson's album, because I took Keith Moon and Harry and all them, and I'd lost the John Dean tapes. I'd lost them, so that album was quit. I'd promised Harry in a drunken stupor I'd produce him, and we rented this house. I thought, get them all in one house and they'll behave themselves. So we got Keith Moon. It was the wrong thing to do. I had Keith Moon, Harry Nilsson, and Ringo. All these people living in a house on the beach, formerly where Kennedy and Marilyn had been, or something like that, on one of those LA houses on the beach. And one day I realized, Jesus, I'm the producer. They're going to be asking me where the tapes are. And we'd go in, the bottle would be out, and everybody was just falling on the floor, and nobody was working. So I sobered up then. I just quit cold turkey, the drink. Finished off Harry's album. Harry doesn't know when to quit. He wants to go on and on and on mixing. Every time you mix it, he wants to do it again. So I ran away to New York with the Harry tapes. I didn't steal them. I said, Harry, you got to leave me alone to finish this. I'm supposed to be producing it. He followed me to New York. I finally had to turn and say, Harry, get the hell out. I want to finish this record. And we got the rock and roll tapes back from Spectre, finally. And I was in the middle of Walls and Bridges. And all hell was going on. And I finished off the rock and roll thing in 5 days. I did about 8 tracks, all in one after the other, because what I found is when I just sort of relaxed, all the words to Stand By Me, Be Bopaloo, I knew them all from being 15. They all just came back like that. So It was simple. But funnily enough, at the end of the rock and roll, on a track called Just Because, which Phil wanted me to sing, I didn't know it that well. You hear me saying, and so we say farewell from Record Plant West. And something flashed through my mind as I said it. Am I really saying farewell to the business? It wasn't conscious. And it was a long, long time before I did take time out. And I looked at the cover, which I'd chosen, which is a picture of me in Hamburg.
That's right.
First time we got there. And the other famous picture that's around in all the Beatle books is a picture of me on stage with the group before Paul had joined. And I'm in a white jacket. It's in the Hunter Davis book and all of them. That was the first day I sang Bebopaloola at a church fete with a band called the Quarrymen. It was the day I met Paul, and he was in the audience. A mutual friend had brought him. So I thought, is this some kind of karmic thing? Here I am with this old picture of me in Hamburg from 61, and I'm saying farewell from Record Plant, and I'm ending as I started, singing this straight rock and roll stuff. Because that was really the last record I made, even though it came out at a different order from Walls and Bridges, I think. They came out backwards order because of what Phil had done with the John Dean tapes.